people don't go to Walmart because it's because they sell all these things. They go to Walmart because they're low prices. Yeah, they sell all these things, but you're getting a lower level of quality, but also a lower price. Whereas when you go to these small little businesses, if you went to a spa and that spa advertised, we do facial cleansing and massages and facials, and we can do your nails, and we can do a manicure and a pedicure, and you're searching for a pedicure, chances are you wouldn't go to them. You go to someone that offers manicures and pedicures. That's why there's nail salons. Whereas these companies that try to be that Swiss Army knife fundamentally don't even get off the ground. And even to build out that app, as I'm sure you know, Michael, it's so expensive. Every feature can pack on thousands of dollars. And you want to be agile when you launch an app realistically. That's what really allows for success. You consistently add features rather than just doing the waterfall effect or the waterfall kind of style of development.
This is another episode of the Automate and Grow podcast. My guest today is Josh Adler from ConvertX, and they are a software incubation company. Hopefully that's the best description. But first of all, thanks, Josh, for joining me today.
Total pleasure. Thanks, Michael, for inviting me.
No problem. So maybe we can start with, what is ConvertX?
No, definitely. It's a lot of companies struggle with building app ideas or kind of getting their ideas off the ground. And something that we've kind of found is by providing the facilities, by that we mean the mentorship and the advisory necessary, and even the capital resources necessary to kind of get an idea off the ground, is a fundamental necessity when really building an idea. And following that, we help out with the legal stuff, we help out with the business side of things. Realistically, at its core, to answer your question, Michael, we're a business-focused software incubator. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So what sort of clients do you work with?
Of course, that's a great question. We have a large plethora of clients. We've worked with people all the way from the healthcare industry, all the way to fintech, all the way to even e-commerce. And it's really what we kind of believe is really anyone can be an entrepreneur. It doesn't really matter what kind of walk of life you come from, whether you were an orphan or whether you come from the son of a billionaire. It doesn't matter. It's all these people in their lifetime come up with brilliant ideas. And it's really crucial that you have the right guidance and advisory to really grow that idea.
So I think you kind of hit on a point, which, when I started kind of in this space like 10 years ago when the iPhone came out, I think everybody and their grandmother had an app idea, right?
For sure.
So what was it that made you want to start this and take this approach?
Definitely. I've been a software developer since I've been a kid. I used to play with 3D printers when the first 3D printer came out. Even before then, I used to build them from scratch. But I've had a very long-standing kind of software kind of relationship, and kind of consistently improving my skills and consistently developing them. And being that I come from a business-oriented family, I believe that it's absolutely crucial to really kind of change the world and create a massive impact. And I thought by having the ability to really kind of dynamically change industries or change industry landscapes at its fundamental core, that was the best way to do it. And not only that, it's when you create businesses, you create jobs. So ConvertX initially started as an idea. I've had several ventures before this, some successful, some failures. Every entrepreneur has, and the ones that aren't willing to admit it are liars. But
not trying enough.
Exactly, right? Or it fell into their lap, and sometimes that happens where it's a success by mistake, almost, I guess you could call it. And I'm sure you've probably heard of that, Michael. But fundamentally, the idea came from one client. I had an experience with one client before this, acting as a kind of individual consultant, and he had questions that were legal-related questions, accounting-related questions, business plan-related questions, and when it came to design and development, I fundamentally understood that because that's my part pay. But when it comes to all these different things that you're looking at, it's so challenging to kind of build them all and put them all together and do it with a small team. And where ConvertX sort of comes in is we say, okay, we are going to be that team. We're that co-founder. Funny enough that you wish you had. And being that you've launched many apps yourself, I'm sure you know exactly what I mean, the challenges you face, right?
Yeah, of course. It's like, I think when people, I don't know if you find this, but usually someone has an idea, they're a non-technical founder of some sort. And I think that was the nice thing about iPhone and now Android was that people looked at software in a different way, and it gave us a different development path. The downside to that is underestimating how complex those projects are.
For sure. Yeah.
So how do you take a non-technical co-founder like that through your process so that they, number one, succeed? Like, how do you improve the odds of success for these founders?
For sure. Well, at ConvertX, we believe it's absolutely crucial, and we have guides on this kind of stuff. Whether you work with us or not, we have impeccable guides that can kind of guide you through these kind of things. But it's fundamentally what we believe is, without a plan, you have nothing to execute on. And being that I've worked with enough businesses in my family's portfolio of investments, it's something I found is the difference between a company that succeeds and fails is having an effective business strategy. We call that blueprinting. Blueprinting is having a business plan and pitch deck that's very thorough, covers the what ifs, or the what if that happens, or what if that happened kind of situations. And really, by kind of planning that whole process and going through that whole process, it brings them up to speed on what expectations can be when building out the software. And then more so than that, kind of filling them in and really advising them and providing that kind of assistance with getting going. And it's realistically, you don't need to be a developer to build an app. It's maybe in the past, if people used to think it's witchcraft, and unless you had the skills of the trade, it was unrealistic to say the least. But nowadays, with a really solid idea and a really solid foundation and strategy and the access to the resources you need, you can scale it and fundamentally build out that idea and bring it to market, even without those technical skills, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. What role do you find that design plays these days?
So personally, and it's actually a very interesting question in that regard, because when people look at design and they look at a logo, and you can look at companies like Slack, you could also look at companies like Xerox, or companies like SpaceX or Spanx, or there's so many different companies, even Mercedes, right? And that's a really great example there as well. But if you look at Slack, and it's a platform that's now been widely adopted. It's if you don't know Slack, you're not in business in times of COVID. But more than anything, how I see it is when you're kind of building out a platform, you need to have unbelievable branding. And more than that, an unbelievable user experience. And that logo or that branding ties into that user experience. And it's essential that when you design an app, you have fundamentally a simple way that you come across with your messaging, and a simple way that you have that the app acts and it functions. And it's, in today's day and age, if you don't have a good user experience, you might as well have not even built the app. And this is what I find that a lot of companies fall into, where they work with a company based off budget. They say, okay, well, I want to get my app off the ground for $5,000, which is a great idea. And if it was possible, that'd be great. But it's with developers charging the way they do, and developers working the hours necessary to build out an app, being that it's not witchcraft, it's a lot of work to get out that app idea and really build it into something more than just the idea itself. But what ties into that heavily is the user experience, and having a really strong user experience that makes sense, that's understandable, that's slim, that's unique and sleek and really easy to navigate. And if you don't have that, it's you should have not even started, if that makes sense. I wouldn't have, even personally. But hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, totally. So it sounds like part of your process with clients is to validate an idea. So how much of that is post or pre-development?
For sure. And it's what we find is a lot of these companies, not to badmouth anyone, it's you come to them with an idea and they say, okay, let's build it. It's going to cost you 40 grand. And they overquote to make sure they cover themselves, and they build it. Being that we're a business-focused software incubator, we solely focus on validation. And that's where that business or blueprint comes into place. You would never, and this is the question I have for you, Michael, would you ever build a house without a blueprint to build a house?
Yeah, that would be a disaster, right?
Correct. Yeah, you might as well take a bunch of sticks and some vines and wrap them together and just build the hut. It'd be easier. But even for that, I'd recommend some planning. It depends on how long you're living there. But when it comes to kind of idea validation or kind of product validation, we solely focus on that in its entirety of the app. Whether it's in the development phase, the design phase, we're consistently testing. But like I mentioned before, after we're done the business strategy, we assist you with climbing those legal hurdles. But then with that third step that comes in is by far the most crucial step in the entire situation. And the reason why I say that is because we call it our pre-user adoption stage. We build out a really kind of high converting landing page that we've kind of tested rigorously with several of our clients. Being that we have dozens of clients in varying industries, we've been able to test the effectiveness of it. And we've seen conversion rates up to 10%, more or less, where it's converting 10% of users, sometimes even more. And our goal with that is basically getting exactly what you mentioned, idea validation. So by people actually pre-signing up for the idea. We're proving the idea itself while proving to investors simultaneously that your idea has something to it. And not only does it make your idea more likely to succeed because you have those users, it also helps you raise capital in a kind of much easier way.
So it sounds like, part of it you're saying is the validation is getting people to go to a high converting landing page. What is the assumption, or like what's your process that you're walking clients through to find people that look like the person they think that's going to buy the thing?
For sure. And that's an interesting question. I'll give you a little bit of a trade secret here. It's a little while back. I had one of my clients, Cardia. He was in the Harvard MIT incubator. He studies currently at Columbia University, and he's working on a alcohol delivery app with us. Testimonial of him is actually on our website. But when we were in the Harvard MIT incubator, and this was quite some time ago, and even before this, we followed the same perception, but they recommended that you go on these platforms like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and all these different types of platforms, and whether it's creating videos or whether it's creating content of any sort, and you reach out to the admins of these Facebook groups within communities that your app would align with. And what you do is you kind of voice your opinion and voice what your app does and how it helps out the community itself. And from there, you kind of build a partnership or an ambassadorship program with them. And in most cases, you don't even pay them anything. They just want to help out. They want to be a part of something. Human beings love belonging. More than anything, the number one thing that people love is to belong. And if you're able to make a Facebook group belong within a bigger community, and by that I mean an app, you got it. And what they do is they take these ambassadors and they say, okay, well, I'm going to become an admin on your kind of Facebook group. And we found that some of these Facebook groups can be as large as a few million users. And you kind of build that partnership with them, and they allow you to have admin access, and then you market on their Facebook group, and then you drive traffic, and it's free traffic. And that's where it's kind of the most interesting, back to your kind of landing page. And that landing page then generates those users via type forms. And then from there, you can collect payments or donations if you wanted to, or really anything of those sorts. And it's quite interesting to see the least. And we cover this quite heavily into our kind of startup guide, or our brutally honest startup guide on our website, actually, if you want to check that out. But it's quite interesting. Yeah,
that's a great process. So thank you for sharing that. That's very useful.
Yeah.
Listen, I want to be conscious of your time. So is there anything we haven't touched on that you think is important?
I'd actually be curious to hear struggles that you went through when you were launching your app, if that's okay.
I mean, for me, I don't know if I personally had struggles. I think I'm probably the opposite mindset, where I'm like, I'm just going to do this and figure it out. I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah.
I think where I've seen people make mistakes is they try to make an app a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
So they're trying to incorporate every single feature in the universe without really understanding what's the one thing that makes this valid or not.
Yeah.
So it's almost like I kind of used to describe it as the monkey in the cage wanting a banana, which sounds, maybe mean, but, the idea is what's that one button, if you could put it in the cage of your ideal client, that they would push to consistently get the reward, the thing that they want. And if you have a lot of buttons, that can be really confusing. So I think it's just almost a philosophy of saying, like, the worst apps that I've seen are trying to be everything to everybody.
Yeah.
And those usually fail. And then people also think you're just going to build it and magically it's going to happen. There's no marketing plan. There's no pre-user adoption. There's no pre-validation, which is why I like your approach. Like it helps increase the odds of success for something.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what we found is we've taken platforms that are just ideas all the way to the point where they have 40,000 users and they haven't even launched yet. They haven't spent a dime on marketing. One of our clients, Shifter, has a Facebook community of a little over 1.9 million people that he's kind of pulled in through his ambassadorship program. So taking their platforms and their Facebook groups and kind of adding them all together, he's reached unbelievable levels. He just partnered with 8080, the biggest car giveaway group in North America. And he's even partners with Nationwide as well, which is the biggest in Colorado. And they have like 700,000 people in their Facebook group, something like that. But it's unbelievable to see that it's so many people. And I just hopped off a call before this. And I can't disclose the idea, of course, like with most of the ideas, unless they're kind of public in a sense. But everyone has an app idea, or not everyone, but some people have app ideas and they see all these different opportunities they can capitalize on. And it's one thing I've learned that the reason why so many small businesses fail is they try to be Walmart, but they're not Walmart. They're not this huge conglomerate with billions of dollars they can realistically spend on an opportunity. Rather, they should say, okay, let's only sell toys, or let's only sell, even more specific, electric toy cars for kids. And if they were to focus on that, and when people are searching electric toy cars for kids on Google, they come up first. And do you think if you're looking at a small little store, people don't go to Walmart because it's because they sell all these things? They go to Walmart because they're low prices. Yeah, they sell all these things, but you're getting a lower level of quality, but also a lower price. Whereas when you go to these small little businesses, if you went to a spa and that spa advertised, we do facial cleansing and massages and facials, and we can do your nails, and we can do a manicure and a pedicure, and you're searching for a pedicure, chances are you wouldn't go to them. You go to someone that offers manicures and pedicures. That's why there's nail salons. Whereas these companies that try to be that Swiss Army knife fundamentally don't even get off the ground. And even to build out that app, as I'm sure you know, Michael, it's so expensive. Every feature can pack on thousands of dollars. And you want to be agile when you launch an app realistically. That's what really allows for success. You consistently add features rather than just doing the waterfall effect or the waterfall kind of style of development, or waterfall approach, which doesn't work anymore.
No, it never. I think that those processes, if anyone starts saying those things to you, then they're not really your partner. They're a development shop and they're trying to rack up hours.
Yeah. Correct.
Whereas this is where your approach is very unique, where you're helping them through the more critical things, it sounds like, which is, let's make sure this is something we should build.
Yeah, exactly. And it's by rather than investing thousands of dollars, like people can start with us with a small investment, building that blueprint I mentioned. And then they can figure out, okay, how much is legal going to cost? How much is marketing going to cost? How much is the software itself going to cost? Because you have all these software development companies that you hop on a call with, and they're giving you a quote in 30 seconds. Which
but it escalates, right, rapidly.
Yeah. And then they come back to you, and it's happened to me. They quoted me $150,000, and this is what sort of kind of helped start ConvertX. Although it was a bad investment, but it's a $150,000 quote. They came back 6 months later, and the timeline was 6 months, and they said, oops, it's going to cost another 150 grand.
Right.
And I said, where am I going to find that cash? Like, you literally just doubled the budget. How did that happen?
You just doomed the project to fail. So
yeah. Right.
It's unfortunate.
It's a sad world, and it's a lot of companies try to kind of rob your pockets, whereas we have the exact opposite mentality. Let's make this as cheap as possible, and we've saved people $40,000 plus even on development in some cases, just because we're more streamlined, and being a company that is able to focus, and we only focus on kind of incubating apps. We do not do brick and mortars or your corner store, any of that kind of stuff. Being that we fundamentally have a very strong understanding and have individuals from around the world, we have over I'd like to say a little over 50 advisors itself that work with ConvertX, and fundamentally help guide and manage and kind of assist you with getting the idea off the ground, because it's proven that it's 88% more effective launching an idea with advisors than it is doing it alone, because they can save you so much money. And most people, they may have a great idea, but they don't understand the do's and don'ts in launching a business.
I love it. That makes total sense. And it's actually consistent with the theme of my new book, which is form your own pack. So I think you're hitting on a couple of themes that I'll make sure I get some input from you on that. That'd be great.
I'm a huge reader. I finish a book or two a week. I'm reading right now the one-page marketing plan, which is a huge recommendation. Yeah,
well,
very interesting.
That brings us to the next question, which is, if you could recommend only one book that people read, what would it be?
That's a great question. There's two answers, and it depends on the person. That's probably the best way I can say this. If you're the kind of person that likes something witty and will motivate you to be in business, the book's called, and sorry for my French here, but it's called Straight to Hell. Unbelievable book on investment and brokerage. It's very inappropriate. I'm not going to lie to you, but it's the kind of book that you read and you're like, wow, that sounds like a hell of a story. And I love great stories. Another really, really great book is, and not to push Grant Cardone, but I'd say the 10X specifically. It's a really great book that it's my belief is in life you should shoot. If you shoot for the stars, worst case, you hit the moon. And that sort of aligns with that. And it's scaling a business quite rapidly is essential. And another book, if you're kind of creating a startup, is the Lean Startup Guide. That's number one read for anyone creating any kind of business, especially if it's software.
Great recommendations. If you are the sum, as Jim Rohn says, of the 5 people you spend the most time with, who do you, Josh, spend the most time with?
That's a great question. And it's, I have two very strong mentors. I believe my first, probably I'd say, is my father. He runs currently the largest operating green energy company or solar energy company at a commercial scale in the world to date. And then my second, and this is probably someone that's not in my family, of course, but my biggest mentor, I'd probably say, is an individual named Mark. He's in legal. Used to head mergers and acquisitions at some very large law firms, and it's, if anything goes wrong, he's my first call. Or even if it goes right, he's always there to congratulate me and kind of guide me. And it's the biggest thing that I find is when you're scaling a business, you'll come across more legal headaches, and not because you're getting in trouble, but drafting the right things, protecting yourself effectively, and making sure that for your shareholders, everything's built out the way it is, and for your board as well. And it's having a buddy that's always by your side whenever you have a legal question and always there is probably the most essential thing probably ever in business. But yeah.
Those are two great people.
Yeah.
How are you, Josh, changing the world?
For sure. It's from a very young age. And it's just a little bit of a story here. At a very young age, I was in grade 3, and everyone used to say, okay, what do you want to be when you're older? And it's always a hard question to answer. You're so young, and you fundamentally don't know if you want to be a policeman or a fireman, right? And that's normally the answer, funny enough. But I said, I want to build apps, build robots, and retire as a VC or venture capitalist. I've never seen anyone whip their head quick enough. And my teacher was in absolute shock that I was already thinking about those kind of stuff. And because those are serious career paths. Those are not things.
Those are real career paths.
Like real, like, okay, fine. You want to be a policeman. You want to have a gun. Cool. Okay. You want to be a fireman. You want to
those are good too. But
a hose. They're great opportunities, and they really help out society. But it's not as strong of an answer as saying I want to retire as a VC.
No, I love it. That's a great ambition. Right? And it seems like you're well on your way.
For sure. And it's at a very young age. I said I'm here not to have kids or not. And sure, if that comes across my path, why not? It's my goal fundamentally since I've been a very young kid is creating massive impact. I come from a family of individuals that have really changed the world, whether it's giving light to individuals that have never even seen a light bulb or have never seen light after the horizon or kind of after the sun fades or sundown specifically. But it's fundamentally, I thought the best way I can do that is by creating jobs and creating opportunities and being someone that catalyzes growth and incubates businesses or software businesses itself. These are the fastest growing businesses in today's day. Look at Zoom, the call software that we're on right now. It's growing abnormally, like it's never seen before, just because everyone sort of had a switch. And same thing with platforms like Slack. So by building software, you're creating fundamentally more jobs. And I believe that's the best way to change the world, providing more opportunities. And by doing that, solving economic inequality, as well as also trying to change the way that people look at learning and education. And that's kind of my next goal with my next venture that I'm soon to be starting to work on, called NorthPact, which is soon to launch in about a year or so. Still working on the kind of foundation of it, but kind of teaching individuals that the traditional ways of education don't work anymore, especially for today's world or today's age. And kind of trying to change that way of people and how they look at these kind of things and kind of diversifying how education functions, if that makes sense.
I have some very definitive ideas about this, so I applaud that venture, and please keep me informed about it and come back and talk about it when you're ready. Because as we talked about before we jumped on, I have some very definitive ideas of where this should go as far as education in general. So that's really exciting to hear about NorthPact. How do people get in touch with you?
For sure. So we have a website. It's ConvertX, just so you guys know. It's spelled ConvrtX.com. There's no E in the name whatsoever. It's I believe that it makes people recognize that you think outside of the box and that you're that black sheep, which I've been brought up with, and I believe still till today, I'm that black sheep, and ConvertX is the same way. So you can check us out on there. We have some great guides and some great information. And if you guys have ever have any questions, reach out to the live chat or give us a shout on our 1-800 number.
Oh boy, you still have one of those. Don't call me. The final thing is, when we have interesting people on the podcast, we like you to nominate other interesting people. We typically talk to experts or entrepreneurs about the person they serve and problems they solve. So who would you, Josh, like to nominate as a future guest of the Automate and Grow podcast?
That's an interesting question. Can I give two, or does it have to be one?
You can give two if you want, yeah.
Sure. There's this individual I'm currently working with, and he has a hell of a story. His name is Carter Olive. and I'll pass his contact details on to you. And then I'd like to nominate Mark. I think he has a hell of a story as well, sort of how he's come across things. I mentioned him before. I'd like him to sort of come on this and kind of talk about his endeavors as a lawyer, because he's a funny guy and has a lot to talk about.
I love it. Those are terrific. So we've got Carter Olive and then Mark, who is one of your two mentors other than your father. And I guess that's one of the mentors, one being your father and one being Mark. So.
I have much more than that, but those are my main.
That's amazing. Those are terrific opportunities to talk to new people. So I appreciate that. We accept those nominations. Josh, I want to acknowledge you for the work you're doing, and I'm excited to hear about your next venture, NorthPack. Thank you for joining me today as a guest of Automate and Grow.
It was a total pleasure speaking with you, Michael. You have a great background, and it's preferably maybe we can have another discussion at some point as NorthPack develops.
That would be wonderful. Well, this has been another episode of the Automate and Grow podcast. We will see you on a future episode, hopefully with Colin and another one, or Carter, sorry. I took his first and last name and made a new name. Carter Olive and Mark on a future episode of Automate and Grow.